What's up, everybody? Pastor Andrew here, and I hope you enjoyed the Winter Wonderland that happened this past Sunday and Monday. I hope that you are back to work, back to school, whatever's going on, that you're getting back into the normal swing of things. But I was so bummed that I wasn't able to share with you our unsung hero of the Christmas story last week, that I thought right now we could talk about our unsung heroes, or sheroes of Christmas, the Innkeepers. So why don't we begin by reading the scripture verse. In those days, Caesar Augustus declared that everyone throughout the empire should be enrolled in the tax lists. This first enrollment occurred when Quirinius governed Syria. Everyone went to their own cities to be enrolled. Since Joseph belonged to the house of David, in the family line of David, he went up from the city of Nazareth in Galilee to David's city called Bethlehem in Judea. He went to be enrolled together with Mary, who was promised to him in marriage and who was pregnant. While they were there, the time came for Mary to have her baby, and she gave birth to her firstborn child, a son, wrapped him snugly and laid him in a manger, because there was no place for them in the guest room. So today we're talking about peace, right? Because last Sunday we were supposed to light the peace candle, right? The first Sunday we lit the hope candle, and this past Sunday we were supposed to light the peace candle. And so today I wanted to talk about the hard work of peace, or maybe learning to be peacemakers. But before that, I wanted to tell a story, right? You see, there was this mother picking up her son from their church's Christmas pageant practice, and we've all been there, right? The lines and all the kids, you're just worried they're going to get each other sick, or you're just worried, oh God, I hope my kid's not the one that pulls his shirt over his head while they're singing "Joy to the World," right? But the boy wasn't that kind of kid. He jumped in the car and he exclaimed, "Mom, I am the hero of this year's Christmas story." To which the mom quickly responded, "Oh, so you're Joseph?" And with a look that only a kid can give a mom through the rearview mirror of her car, he shot a look at her that told her that was not the correct response. So she asked, was he the lead shepherd? And still he frowned. Was he the king with the crown, the angel Gabriel? Was he any of these big over-the-top characters? He said, "No, Mom, even better than that." Thinking quickly and looking at her son, who wasn't very tall yet, but who still wasn't very small, she said, "Surely you're not the baby Jesus, are you?" And with eyes that rolled back and seemed as though they would stay rolled back in his head forever, he said, "No, Mom. I told you I'm the star of the whole show." Excited for her son, but also frustrated by not being able to find the answer and her own lack of ability to understand what he was saying, she exclaimed, "Well, who are you then?" Her son, with the biggest grin that he'd had all Christmas season, even bigger than when he'd run down the toy aisle, the aisle of toys in the department store, even bigger than when he saw those giant Christmas cookies being baked, even bigger than all of the smiles all year, grinned back at his mom, and through that grin said, "I am the Innkeeper. And without the Innkeeper, there would be no place for Jesus to be born. He's the real hero." I love this Christmas story, right? I love that because oftentimes kids seem to get the Christmas story more than we ever get it as adults. Kids seem to understand what's going on in the Christmas story more than we tend to get it, even though we've gone through training, or we've gone through years of listening, and we've read books, and we've heard it our whole lives. The innocence of the child's ears to see who this innkeeper was is an amazing story. I grew up with pastors coming out, and they'd give monologues, and they'd try to do a fake Jewish accent, like they were from some shtetl in Europe, and they try to do their best Yiddish, and they would pretend to be the innkeeper, and who was really apologetic and sorry for not knowing that it was the King of all kings, that it was Jesus that was coming, for not knowing that this special person was going to be born. And if they had, they would have cleared room. Right? Or how we should learn, these monologues always painted the innkeeper in the worst light. They always just made him seem like just a guy that just didn't care. Right? And they never even talked about his wife, because, I mean, if there's a household, there's not just one, but two people taking care of that household. Or other ways that the pastors growing up would talk to me about this innkeeper, that would preach about this innkeeper, is they would say, well, we should learn from his bad example and create plenty of room in our homes for Jesus. Right? This Christmas, make room in your home for Jesus. Are you going to leave any space for him to be there? But this little boy wasn't caught up in all that hype. He wasn't caught up in all that craziness that surrounds like us trying to make adult things fit into stories that need to be seen through the eyes of a child. This little boy saw the innkeeper with wonder and faith. Because for children, sometimes the smallest things in the stories, things that don't even really get mentioned, for children, sometimes those small things can be a really big deal. As adults, we often focus on the big events and the big players. Our minds are drawn to those who we see having power and influence. Right? Think about it. Who do you follow on Instagram? It's probably not the guy that sweeps up your children's school, right? It's probably not somebody that you don't consider being powerful or having something to say. You want to follow somebody on Instagram, right? We say that. We say follow. Are you following this person on Facebook or Instagram? Are you following them on Twitter? Right? We focus on the big players, the powerful, the persons with influence. But the truth is that the innkeeper and his wife are truly the heroes of this story. You see, we sing a song, "O Little Town of Bethlehem," right? And we don't really take into account that, like, it really was a little town of Bethlehem. Let's look at the context here a little bit. Bethlehem was like a small town, right? And not just like a small town suburb of Jerusalem, but like sometimes it wasn't on the map, right? It was smaller than small. And for those of you that grew up in Charlotte or around here, maybe you grew up in Gaston County, you'll get this. Bethlehem is Ranlow small. Like, it's so small that it's incorporated or unincorporated, or you don't even know what it is. You kind of just drive through it. There's not even a stop sign, much less a stop light. Bethlehem was that small. And look, at the first part of the verse, everyone who had left their hometown had returned. Excuse me. Everyone who had left their hometown had returned to register for the census, right? Mary and Joseph lived in a frontier town called Nazareth in the province of Galilee. Much like our Charlotte, right? Like much like the Charlotte we live in now, it was a place full of transplants in the Galilee, where people prospered and had large families. The truth was that poor little Bethlehem had more people from there living outside of it than it had room for within its borders. The extended family was packing themselves in the homes of their relatives that were about the size of a contemporary double-wide trailer, right? So you had 30 or 40 people trying to cram into that small space with their animals, right? Because the animals came inside as well. And so the reason that they're doing this and the reason that this happens isn't so much just because, like, oh, like you come home and like everybody's poor and you just pile into one house. No, like they literally had commandments to be hospitable, right? They were filling their houses more and more than they ever usually did. But it was a part of their relationship with God to be ready to be a host, right? These people, this innkeeper and his wife, these are probably Joseph's cousins. And Joseph's cousins and other cousins and second and third cousins are already filling up the house. And when they arrive, they know that this is their cousin, right? And they know that God has always commanded that they be ready to host. Jewish people of that time would keep an extra chair at the table, an extra setting, just in case somebody was to stop by. There was a space for travelers to sleep so that no matter where you were traveling, there was somewhere where you could stay. It was a part of their religious tradition. So now thinking about this small town that wasn't even on most maps, put yourself into the situation of the innkeepers, or more likely, Joseph's cousins. You're being filled with hundreds and hundreds of people knocking at your door, and there's no room. All of your other cousins that still live in Bethlehem, their house is full, their house is full, their house is full. Your house is just filled up, and you hear a knock. You open the door, and it's your cousin, your little cousin you haven't seen in years, and he's grown up, he's a big man now, and he's got with him his pregnant fiance, who Aunt Edith is up in the room, the upper room where people were staying already. Aunt Edith is there, like, she's already telling everybody about this pregnant girl that says it was God's fault, right? She's spreading all the rumors. And your house is so full, you don't even know where you're going to sleep. But you look at your spouse, and they look back at you. And you sigh, and you know what you have to do. You can't leave her out there in that condition. You can't leave him out there in that condition. What are they going to do, sleep in an alleyway? It's Bethlehem. There is no alleyways. Right? So you invite them in. You invite them in not knowing where you're going to put them, not knowing where they're going to be. But you know you have to do it. You can't just leave them on the street. Aunt Edith can keep all that stuff she's saying up in that upper room. You don't have much to offer your cousins, right? Because these other cousins and family members that are visiting, your sister, she's got those 8 kids, right? They've eaten up all the food, and there's not much left to do. There's barely any blankets. But what you have, you give them. And you make do. You do the best with what you got. Sometimes the little you have is the biggest gift, the biggest thing that you can give to the world. It would have been easy for the innkeeper / Joseph's cousin to tell him to get lost, right? Take that pregnant fiance of yours somewhere else. Or to just assume that someone else who had more resources, maybe, cousin Ephraim down the street, he's got lots of money, like maybe he'll put him up somewhere. Sometimes it's easy to assume that someone else who has more resources will step in. Surely the people with the power and the money had this handled. I mean, it's not his fault that his cousin's here, right? It's some guy named Caesar that lives all the way in Rome. So why does he have to step in and do something about it? But the reason that the innkeepers, the cousins, are heroes is that they made a choice to offer themselves and what they had because they could, because they were able, because having peace with their cousin was more important than having things and space and security. This morning, or this afternoon, or whenever, right, is Peace Sunday. And so often we look at the news and we see children locked in jails or tear gassed at the border. We see pastors being locked up going to help these children who are being told that there's no room here for them. Or being told that they just need to move on because it's already too full here. There's not enough resources. There's not the ability to have anybody show up at our borders and dare to ask for help. Right now, that door is slamming shut and telling hundreds of Marys and Josephs to go back to where you came from. We see these endless wars and conflicts continue overseas, creating these refugees, creating these holy families running from danger and searching for the promise of shelter among us. We see young mothers encouraged to keep their children and then turned away from home after home when they seek the ability to raise those children in peace and security and maybe, just maybe, earn enough to feed all of those babies. And year after year, we look to those in power on both sides, right? We look to those in power with the money and the resources, and we say, help them. And some of them promise to help, right? In fact, most of them promise to help. Nobody ever comes up with a solution that works, but everybody has a solution that fits their agenda. But this morning, the story of Christmas calls to us not to wait for peace to be born from war pigs or the powers of this world, right? For peace to be born through the might and the power and the wealth of the wealthy and the powerful who control things from the top. No, Emmanuel, God with us, is being born into this world and does not seek out the palaces of royalty or the stately homes of politicians. He doesn't want to be born at the top of a tower with gold letters. He's waiting to be born not through the gifts of those who seem to have it all, but he is waiting for the heroes and the sheroes who will stand up and say, I have this stable and some blankets. It's not much, but it is yours. This Christmas season, you have a choice. Will you offer what you have because you can? Or will you shut the door on the Prince of Peace because you're unwilling to part with what you have? May you be filled with the spirit of the innkeepers, with the spirit of Joseph's cousins this Christmas. May you be filled with the spirit of hospitality that says, I may not have much, but what I have, I will give to my Lord. May it be so. Amen.